It will be our presenting speaker. So feel free to enjoy, and we'll have a question and answer session at the end.
See if I can get this to work. I appreciate the offer to come and speak today here at this event, and I'm going to talk today not only about Operation Underground Railroad, but specifically what we do in fighting human trafficking. And we'll dive into what human trafficking is, some of the things that make it so that it is in existence, and talk about what we can do to fight it, not only what we're doing, but as an organization, but what individuals can do to fight human trafficking. My name is Tyson Wright, and I am the Director of Outreach for Operation Underground Railroad. What that means is I get to do this. I go around and educate people on human trafficking and educate people on what is being done by organizations like ours to fight human trafficking. Our mission statement here is at OUR is to shine a light worldwide on the global epidemic of child sex trafficking, and in so doing, rescue more children from slavery and assist law enforcement to seek justice for those who violate children. You can sum that up in we exist to end human trafficking, and we focus on child sex trafficking. It's a growing demand in the world, and we're going to talk about some of the things that we as Americans play a part in creating that demand. Operation Underground Railroad was started by a gentleman named Tim Ballard back in 2013, at the end of 2013. And Tim Ballard at the time, before starting OUR, was a federal agent with Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, as it's called. And he was, as a federal agent, fighting human trafficking. He was developing the processes, developing how these investigations would happen and occur, working on doing the investigations and assisting prosecution when it came to holding the criminals or traffickers accountable. And he was doing all this and being very actively involved as a federal agent. But what he found at the time was that his jurisdiction only went to the border of the United States, and that a lot of his cases were originating or had ties on the other side, in other countries in South America, in the Caribbean, that his cases led there. And there's only so much that he could do, even as a HSI agent, to assist and continue the investigations when they fell outside of the United States. So he came to a pivotal decision. There was two cases that came across his desk. One originated down in Colombia, and the other originated down in Haiti. And as much as he tried, he couldn't do anything to help prosecute these cases. So he said, either I need to just put these cases out of my mind, as difficult as that is, or I need to quit my job and do something about it. Well, he quit his job and retired at that moment and founded Operation Underground Railroad, and went after originally those two cases and continuing the investigations and supporting those governments, like in Colombia and in Haiti, in investigating these cases that were going on. We're going to jump away from kind of OUR and just get into some information and statistics about human trafficking in general. So human trafficking is one of the fastest growing criminal enterprises in the world, soon to probably pass up the illegal arms trade and the illegal drug trade. It's estimated that it's $150 billion a year are spent in the human trafficking industry. One of the reasons that exists is because there's low risk. It's not very risky right now for someone to traffic an individual. And one of those reasons we kind of create, not to make us feel guilty, but to kind of help us change. As we talk about human trafficking, and as I give some examples today, they're going to be hard to hear. It's going to put a pit in your stomach. You're going to think people are like that. And you might want to think, well, maybe I'll just ignore it and assume it doesn't exist. Assume that maybe that's not as widespread as we think. And so we create that dark space for human trafficking to live within because we don't want to open our eyes to it. We don't want to accept the realities of human trafficking and what it looks like. And so these traffickers can continue moving forward because us as a society don't pursue it in a way that we need to. And there's high rewards. Like I said, it's an industry where there's a lot of money, where there's a lot of demand for not only things like child pornography, which the term is changing to child sexual abuse material. CSAM is the term we're moving from child pornography to. There's money in that. There's money in sex tourism, individuals traveling somewhere to have sex with an individual. And in a lot of cases where we focus, with children, to have sex with a child or rape a child. There's a lot of money in it, in the world. One of the pieces that draws us into it is the fact that Americans, we're one of the biggest demands and consumers of pieces attached to this industry, human trafficking. We participate more than anyone in sex tourism. We're individuals who are leaving America and going to other countries in Latin America, in Asia, in the Caribbean, with the intent of raping an individual, paying to have sex with a minor, with a child. We're part of that problem. We're one of the largest consumers of child sexual abuse material, or CSAM. We try to use that to our advantage, and we'll talk about that in a second. But we need to understand and accept some of these realities. It's hard to accept, it's hard to wrap our mind around, but we need to accept some of these realities. So what is human trafficking? Human trafficking falls into two categories here in the United States and around the world for the most part, into sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Labor trafficking is an individual who's being forced to work without pay or for a trade of some sort. They don't have control of their lives, kind of like slavery in a way. But the way that they get there often differs in some ways that they end up in labor trafficking. The other one is sex trafficking. And that is an individual who either through coercion, fraud, or force is made to have sex with an individual for money, to perform a commercial sex act. And where we focus most of our efforts is on child sex trafficking. That's the sex trafficking of minors is where we do most of our work and our investigations, especially outside the United States. Another form that can fall into and lead to human trafficking is online exploitation. And we've seen this at a rise over the last 2 years with the pandemic that's happened. We've created a climate for child exploitation to take off at rates never before seen. In some cases, increasing by 200 or 300% of reported cases. And with most things like this, sexual abuse, sexual assault, human trafficking, the numbers of actual reported cases is so much lower than the actual cases that are happening. It's not something that there's high reports about. So that makes it even more worrisome. If the number of cases that are being reported have increased by 200 or 300%, how many cases are out there that are not being reported? During this pandemic, we've taken our children and we've put them online. So this is going to be the way to do schooling. But in a lot of cases, there's not supervision. The parents still have to go to work. The parents still have to go about their life. In some cases, the parents don't understand technology. And so the kids are vulnerable. And we put them in front of a screen. In addition to that, those predators that exist in the world have also gone online. They might be working from home. They might be working remotely. And now they're having more access and time online as well. So we put a vulnerable population right in front of a predator. It's estimated that at any moment, there's 500,000 predators online. Right now, 500,000 people, predators, who have the intent to exploit or solicit a child online right now. And we've taken all of our children and said, online school is the way to go. And some of those have relaxed over this year, but still there's a lot of children who are online and again, vulnerable and ready for those predators to try to take advantage. One way that they're going to do this is through grooming, process called grooming. Now, many of you here will remember years ago we called it stranger danger, and we would warn against the white van outside, and as long as you didn't help him find his dog or take candy from him, you were fine, and you were safe and avoid it. We could identify who it was. Well, through online exploitation, that individual sold his van, and he went and he sits online, and he can be whoever he wants to be. You could have a profile that's a young girl, a young boy, an older girl, a model, a guy who works at McDonald's. He can create as many of these profiles as he wants to use this grooming process to build a relationship with a child online, to learn what some of those vulnerabilities are. All of us have needs in life. We can go psychology's route and talk about Maslow and some of the needs that he told us about. First, we have the basic need for food and shelter. Then we go up from there and we have the need for love, for connection, for relationship, for social interaction. These individuals, predators online, try to identify those needs, those vulnerabilities that a kid has. You can think in your own life over the last couple years and even further back, if you've ever had a moment where you felt lonely, where you've ever felt disconnected, and I'm sure we've all had those. Well, children are experiencing that as well, and they're looking for it in places that aren't safe. That's online. And these predators use the grooming process to exploit that. Now I'm going to jump back to OUR for a little bit and what we do. When you think of OUR, I want you to think of an agency that supports, an agency that assists law enforcement, not only here in the United States, but around the world. In the United States, we support law enforcement with the resources and tools that they need to perform and investigate human trafficking cases and to do that investigation. And like I've mentioned and said, a lot of that's gone online. And they need more technology and they need more training to do it. We've supported law enforcement in every state in the United States in some regard with training, with technology and other resources that they need. It's the law enforcement who are the true heroes. It's law enforcement police officers who are doing this work. And we just want to be another tool in their toolbox to help them get the resources that they need. So often, and especially over the last 2 years, our police departments are not getting the respect that they need. They're not seeing the appreciation that they need. Some of their funding's being cut. And all that really damages is us as a community, that our police officers don't have the resources that they need to keep us safe, to keep our children safe. And we want to help alleviate some of that exists. One cool program that we have to support these local law enforcement is our ESD dogs. These are electronic storage device canines. And I don't know how people, figure this out, that dog can do these things, or how you train these dogs. But we've partnered with a gentleman who trains these dogs to go in and they can sniff out the chemical that's inside the soldering of computer devices. So these dogs can go in on a search warrant and they can smell that chemical that exists inside a hard drive, inside a USB drive, even things as small as the SIM card inside your phone. The dogs can smell the chemical that exists there and help law enforcement when they're performing a warrant to search for some of this evidence, as it is digital, and these dogs can find it. We've placed over 46 of these dogs in police departments around the United States, and they've assisted in thousands of search warrants. And in many cases, finding the evidence that police officers would have missed because criminals aren't dumb in a lot of cases, and they hide it. And you can imagine if you're looking for a USB thumb drive and the criminals hid it, you probably have no chance of finding it. And the places that these dogs find some of this material is just astounding and amazing that they could find it. In some cases, they found a USB drive or an SD storage device behind the wall plate of an outlet. The criminal took off the front plate, stuck the USB drive back inside there, and put the plate back on. An officer would never think to take that apart and look inside. Well, the dog smelt and said, hey, sat down, gave the sign that there was something here. They took the outlet cover off and found it. Another one that just blows my mind is one of these canines in Philadelphia that we gave to the police department. They went in on a search warrant, and it kept hitting and saying on a pile of change that was on the ground, and hitting and sitting down and giving the sign. And his handler was just like, the dog's distracted, and kept pulling him away. Well, 4 times this dog went back to this pile of change. And finally, the officer's like, okay, maybe there's something here. And they spread out the change and was able to hone in on one 50-cent piece that was on the ground. And he picked it up and looked at it, and it looked like any 50-cent piece, but it didn't feel right. And as he played with it, it popped open, and inside was a SIM card that contained thousands of files of CSAM. And if the dog wasn't there and wasn't a resource, they would have never been able to find that evidence. That can later help in the prosecution. And these are just some of the examples of ways that we support law enforcement. Last year, we placed 17 dogs in 15 states alone, just in 2021. Now I want to jump to our international work. Human trafficking is a worldwide problem. It's estimated that there's 25 million people trapped in human trafficking right now in the world. And what I mentioned earlier about Americans creating this problem and being one of the biggest consumers and demand creators for human trafficking, we try to utilize in our favor. And the way that we do that is by supporting investigations that happen around the world. We have what we call our operators, and these individuals come from backgrounds with law enforcement, with federal agencies, in the military. They have the training and understanding of doing investigations, and especially undercover investigations. We take that fact that Americans are one of the biggest consumers and demands, and we try to flip that to our advantage. And because our operators and individuals look American, they can go to these countries, and the traffickers believe that they are Americans there to buy an individual for sex. So we work with governments around the world, always in connection with law enforcement and the government in the country, to do undercover operations and rescue the children and individuals who are being trafficked. We convince the trafficker that we're there to buy a kid, or we want to have kids brought. The trafficker brings the children or any other individual, and we bring the police and law enforcement and set up a sting operation. And once the exchange is made and we get all the evidence that we need, the police rush in, arrest the traffickers and our operators as well, and rescue those children. We then take those children and we put them on a path to recovery in our aftercare program, which we'll talk some more about. But I want to highlight a few stories, and one specifically that ties here to St. George in its origination. It's of a young boy named Gardy. And Gardy was born here in St. George, actually, an American citizen, and his parents are Haitian. And his parents, went back to Haiti for a church mission. And while they're in Haiti, took the whole family, while they're in Haiti, Gardy got kidnapped and taken. And as the details have come out, it was a personal reason and that he was kidnapped. It didn't start with any reason about human trafficking. It was an individual that they knew who kidnapped him. And through some deals and greed and wanting to make money, Gardy was sold to traffickers. And this is one of those 2 cases that came across Tim's desk while he was still a federal agent. And one of the reasons why he left and went and started Operation Underground Railroad. Well, when Tim went down there and was working with the Haitian government, they started building a case, doing investigation, and found a location that they assumed Gardy was at. Now, this was all happening right after the big earthquake that happened in 2012-13 there in Haiti. And at that time, tens of thousands of children were orphaned. As the earthquake happened, buildings collapsed, families, parents died, and kids were just left wandering the streets. Well, traffickers utilized that situation for the bad. And they would take on the side of the buildings and write orphanage on the side of the building. And kids or others would bring, kids would go, or people would take kids to this building that said orphanage, thinking this is a good place for the kids to go. They'll be safe here. Well, this location was just a big trafficking ring. And Gardy was taken to this location among other children as well. And the investigation led to this orphanage, this fake orphanage, and Tim and some of our other operators went in undercover, posing to be there to buy kids. And they went in looking for Gardy and found that there were 28 kids at this compound who were there. And the traffickers, after some conversation, offered for Tim and these other operators to buy some of the kids and do whatever they want with them. So they set up an operation. They got a hotel, a fake hotel room, and they went. And the traffickers came, and Tim and the operators came and made an arrangement and exchanged money. And the police came in and arrested. And at the same moment, they raided the compound right as that happened as well, and were able to rescue those 28 kids from this compound. And Gardy's father's name is Gesno, and Gesno was there, and Tim, got the report back as he asked, was Gardy there? Did we save Gardy? Did we find him? And Gardy wasn't there. He had been sold just a few days previous to another trafficker. And Tim had the horrible news of telling Gesno that Gardy wasn't there, that they just barely had missed Gardy. And Tim went to Gesno and said, Gesno, we rescued these 28 kids, but Gardy's not one of those kids who's there. And Tim was breaking down as he tried to bear this news to Gesno. And Gesno had this big smile on his face. And Tim thought, well, maybe he misunderstood me. He is from Haiti and he doesn't speak great English. So Tim said it again. He's like, no, Gesno, I don't know if you understood, but we did not find Gardy. He's not here. And Gardy just had this big smile and says to Tim, but didn't you say you rescued 28 children? And Tim was like, yeah, we did. We rescued 28, but Gardy wasn't one of those 28. And Gardy then said something to Tim that inspires us and helps us to move forward to this day. He said to Tim, if I have to sacrifice my son so that those 28 kids could be rescued, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And then he backed that up in action, and he went down to the police station and he said, if any of these kids don't have a place to go today, I'll take them home with me and I'll adopt them. And that day he adopted 8 children from that rescue operation. Since then, we don't know the exact number, but we're still looking for Gardy. Haven't found him. He's about 11 or 12 years old now. And in Operation Specific Looking for Gardy, we've rescued over 500 kids. And that statement by Gesno still drives us, there specifically in Haiti, as we continue to try to find Gardy and rescue children in his name. Our international operations supports efforts in 26 countries around the world. We're on pretty much every continent now in supporting the efforts of governments around the world trying to end human trafficking. To date, we've assisted in rescue over 5,400 survivors and assisted in the rest of 3,400 traffickers around the world. Here's a map showing where we work and the efforts that we're doing. These are just some of our most recent ones that we did. And in a lot of cases, this 5 traffickers arrested, again, in a lot of cases, some of those numbers there are Americans who are being down there and traveling to those countries. So now I want to make the tie over to now that we've talked about human trafficking and talking about what OUR is doing, tying into some of the political issues that exist, since this is pizza and politics, I want to introduce to you a piece of legislation that's actually in Congress right now, in the Senate. It's called the Earn It Act. With the increase of exploitation online and the increase of children, we're finding that even if we can get the evidence, even if we can find the transfer of information with websites and things that exist out there that are community based, where someone in the community can post something online, that internet providers, websites, apps, social media have immunity. They can say, it's not our content, we didn't post it, someone else posted it. And in a lot of cases, you have child sexual abuse material that's being posted online and it stays there. And the provider, the company knows it's there, but they use this immunity that exists in our law under Bill 230 that passed years ago to say it's not my content, I didn't post it, and I don't have a responsibility. So the Earn It Act is to create that responsibility, to create that accountability of internet providers, of website hosting companies, of social media, that if there is child sexual abuse material on their site, they need to do something about it. It removes the immunity that exists. It will officially change the term child pornography to CSAM, child sexual abuse material, and it establishes a commission that will help to build the best practices that the law can be founded on moving forward. So this piece of legislation doesn't have many actual law pieces in it right now. There are a few, but it establishes a commission which will then build the best practices, which then a law can be drafted around. So one way that we can support is by writing to our local legislators and telling them you want them to support the Earn It Act. It unanimously went out of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate and will now be introduced on the Senate floor to have a vote for it. And from there, will then go over to the House to be voted on. There's a lot of backlash from the tech industry saying that it's going to remove privacy, it's going to destroy our abilities online to stay anonymous. There's specific verbiage in here that protects privacy. It doesn't say that law enforcement can check whatever they want, whenever they want. They still have to follow due process and warrants and things like that. But there is a lot of pieces around it by the tech industry and these websites to try to tear it down and say that it is going to ruin our privacy online. You can find out more on Earn It Act on our website or just by Googling the Earn It Act. You can get more information on what it is. Before I jump to aftercare, there's one other piece that I want to touch on that again ties to politics, and that's our southern border. As we know, there's a lot of problems that exist down there, but specifically human trafficking, our policies are creating almost an open gate to individuals coming and crossing the border, but also to human trafficking. And one of those policies that exists is the fact that an individual can show up at the border with a minor or cross the border, and even if they're caught in the United States, if they have a child with them, they get to stay in the United States. There's not many questions asked, and there's not much looked into on is that child related to the individual. And so you have on the other side of the border in Mexico, you have kids who are being sold to individuals who want to get across the border. You have kids just being taken and brought to the border. And then they serve their purpose. They get across. They're in America. Even if they get caught, they get a note that says show up to court on this date. And in a lot of cases, that's 6 months to a year from now. Chances are they're never going to show up. And then they take that minor, their ticket across the border, and they leave them, or they sell them, or the arrangement was made by a trafficker in Mexico for this process, and they deliver them on the other side of the border, where again, then they're stuck in this life of human trafficking. And our policies create this. because of the rules that we have at the border, and because we're spread thin, we create this opportunity for human trafficking to exist. We're pretty much saying, go for it. Here's how you do it, and that needs to change. There needs to be different policies and rules at the border that don't allow and create this to happen, with children being used and sold as a ticket to get here into the United States. So after we've rescued a child, after we've got them out of this life that they're living and they're stuck in, they go into our aftercare programs. And one of the statements that I love about our aftercare programs is that our aftercare meets the individual where they're at, and we help them get to where they want to get on their healing journey. We don't define it for them. We don't say, this is what you need to do to get over the trauma that you've gone through. This isn't what you have to do to move forward in life. They tell us, and we support it. In a lot of cases, in most cases, that's mental health therapy. That's vocational training. That's educational training. That's housing. That's helping them get back on their feet. A lot of individuals in human trafficking, especially that end up here in the United States, have been tricked to come here in some way. In a lot of cases, they don't have documentation. Their passports were taken, their visas were taken. So we help them get that information back. If they want to or feel necessary to return to their home country, we help get them back to where they want to be. Not only here in the United States, but around the world, we see this happening. We support aftercare in 32 countries around the world, in supporting that number of 5,400 survivors and many others. But one of the greatest things that I love about our aftercare is there's no graduation date. It's not like, well, you're turned 18 and you're out, or we've helped you for 10 years and that's all we can do. We'll support these survivors for the rest of their lives with whatever they need. In a lot of cases, because trauma is so complex, they might get over and be able to deal with that trauma right now. But 5 years, 10 years from now, there might be something that triggers it again and puts them in a downward spiral. And we're there to help them. So even if they say, I'm good and we'll talk to you later, if they ever need anything and come back, we're there with open arms to help support them with whatever they need. We've helped in sending individuals to cosmetology school because that's what they want to do. Helped individuals go to college to get degrees in social work because they want to be the person who helps someone in their situation. We've helped individuals go to business school so that they can go back to their country and have a chance to overcome some of those things that they face in their home country. We want to be a support to them, and we'll do whatever we can. We call this our person-focused model. It's about them. It's not about us. It's not about our aftercare or anyone else. It's about that individual and what we can do to support them in healing through their life. I'm going to tell you one more story here about a little girl that we call Little Wonder Woman. She was trafficked and rescued down in South America. And in a lot of cases, especially with a minor, the prosecution will do whatever they can to build the evidence so that the individual, the minor, doesn't ever have to take the stand. It can be a very traumatic experience for that minor. She had been trafficked for years, and she as this prosecution was going on, she said, I want to do something. I don't want to just sit back. I want to go to the stand and testify of what happened. A little 7-year-old. So we helped her prepare and get ready, and she went and she testified. And in that testimony that she gave, she told of other children who had been trafficked by this same trafficker, and was able to work with law enforcement after the trial to identify and help to rescue, as it says here, 3 more additional survivors. And she, again, is an example to us of determination, of making that change in her life, not letting it paralyze her, so that she can assist those 3 other survivors. As we talk about here, this conversation can be tough, and it can go in one of 2 routes. It can either paralyze you and make you think the world is terrible and there's no hope, or it can empower you. And little Wonder Woman here, as we call her, is an example of empowerment, of taking this knowledge, taking this information, and moving forward. Now, I want to introduce two individuals over here who are in our community here in St. George uh, and can help in making a difference here and helping you get involved if you want to do something to fight human trafficking. The way through volunteering, and the way that that happens is through education and awareness, empowering people with the information about human trafficking, how to spot the signs, and how to overcome. So we have Trina Wright, which no relation to me. We do share the same last name, but we're not related, who is our volunteer team leader for the community here in St. George. And then I always say your name wrong. Kaisa, who is our student club leader here on campus for our Students Against Trafficking. So if you guys want to come and just talk about the team and the club and ways that individuals can get involved. Maybe.
So, like Tyson said, my name is Trina, and I am the St. George area volunteer leader for Operation Underground Railroad. And what we do here in St. George is anywhere that we can be a presence, such as festivals, races. We have a lot of public events happening around here, and we try to go. We set up booths. We do everything we can to reach out to people and to let them know about Operation Underground Railroad and their mission. So like Tyson said, the goal is education and awareness. We also have programs in our schools. Like Kaisa is the leader for Students Against Trafficking here at Dixie. And one of the things that people often say to me is they'll thank me, like just today, they'll thank me for all the work that I do for this organization. But what I immediately do is I turn around and I thank that person, and I thank all of you for coming today, because like Tyson said, it's a difficult subject, it's a difficult topic. It takes a strong person to look at it straight on, and it takes an even stronger person to say, I'm going to do something about this. And the way to truly beat this, and I've heard it said by an operator online on social media, is that people who are aware need to outnumber the predators. And when we outnumber them and we shine a light on what it is that they're doing, that's when we will eradicate modern day slavery and child sex trafficking, which is the main goal. So thank you for coming and being willing to take this information and to share it. How you can help here in St. George, our website, OUR's website, is ourrescue.org. It's on the information that I passed out to you earlier. If you go on there, there's a link that you can click to create a volunteer profile, put in your information. You can choose what it is that you would like to be involved in, like what degree, if you want to just share on social media, if you want to share with friends and family, if you would like to participate or work with me in events here in St. George, you can select that option, and then I'll have your information and can reach out to you, and you will get information via email about events and things that are happening around here. So I think that's all I have for you guys. I hope to work with all of you, and at least many of you soon, and I'll turn it over to Kaisa.
Hi, so yeah, my name's Kaisa. It's my second semester here. I'm from Boise, Idaho, and yeah, so we've had this club for a while. It's been kind of dormant for about a year, but we're trying to get it started back up again. So I know it's kind of a heavy subject, but we'll still have fun and you'll still meet lots of good-hearted people. Um, so yeah, if you want, we have an Instagram. I think it's just DSU against trafficking. And then also, I don't know if you guys know much about Blazerlink, but you can just go to the website, the school's website, go to clubs, and you can log into um, Blazerlink and you can join, and I can put you on the email list. I think our main goal, we want to do a couple of events. I know around the country, lots of communities or colleges have done like um, doubles tournaments as fundraisers for volleyball and like um, just like color runs, like she said, just stuff like that. So it'll still be fun, even though it's kind of a tough thing to talk about. But yeah, so if any of you want to join, I'll have in our Instagram, you can kind of see our upcoming events. We want to kind of have like an opening social of some sort to kind of get things started back up again. But yeah, that's all I have.
Cool. Thank you. We're now going to turn the time over for some question and answers. If anyone has any questions, Garrett here will just kind of bring the mic over to you and just keep your hand raised, and then I'll hand you the mic and you can ask your question.
Yeah, do you know what the support you're getting from the Utah lawmakers, our representatives and senators on the Earn It Act?
I haven't seen specifically anything from them, but I will say that Utah as a state um, is ahead of a lot of states with our own laws and our own rules here in the state in fighting human trafficking. We're very proactive, but I haven't seen any statements from any of our representatives specific about the Earn It Act. But we've had a lot of support here in Utah specifically um, with our own laws. So I would imagine that there's a lot of support on it, but I don't haven't seen any statements on that.
Yeah. I had a question about those that you're incarcerating. Does the incarceration stick, or do they recycle back into trafficking?
It's a tough one to answer because we work across the globe. Um, sadly, in some places, human trafficking isn't seen as harsh of a crime as it is in other places, and so it's not prosecuted, and the sentencing connected to it isn't as severe in some places. It's more like a speeding ticket in some places, but there are things being done to increase that by world organizations and the United States with our State Department to try to increase the countries and what they do to fight human trafficking. Now, in the United States, generally it does stick, and most states do have some severe penalties associated with it, with greater lengths of jail time. But again, even here in the United States, it varies state by state on what their sentencing is attached to it. But in most cases, yes, but not all.
I think I can add some light to that question. We work in the guardian ad litem's office, so we represent abused and neglected kids. And I can tell you down here in St. George and southern Utah, trafficking is alive and well. The problem's not getting punishments to stick. It's even getting to that point where we can even charge. And so I would say that's more of the difficulty. Trafficking by nature is very siloed. It's very compartmentalized, so they're very insulated. It's very difficult to route them out, for lack of a better explanation. I recently closed a case. Little girl was 9, 12 named perpetrators, 3 different states, not one charge. Couldn't do it. Had nothing to go on. That was with the FBI. That was local law enforcement. Nothing we could do about it. She named them by name. showed where they were. Had nothing going. So yeah, I think a lot of what you're saying about bringing light to it, and that's where we need to start.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And tying again, bringing in St. George, um, the police departments here are very active in trying to fight human trafficking. But again, it's a hard one to find and spot, get the evidence, and do get everything in line so a prosecution can happen. But specific even here to DSU, the DSU police is very active in doing what they can to try to deter it. They do a number of sting operations trying to put it out there that we're aware that this is happening and we're going to try to fight it, and we're going to work towards figuring out what is the best way to get the evidence that we need to be able to prosecute this. So it is on the mind of our law enforcement here in southern Utah, and they're doing and taking steps to prosecute where they can. Any other questions?
That's the hard part. We're working with the case that we disclosed. We're working with the ITAC and crimes against children here in Utah. We're working with the FBI out of Arizona, and that's the problem is getting. In our case, it ended up being the traffickers were against our victims were, and law enforcement said we don't have enough to charge.
And you can't keep them on radar.
Well, I'm not law enforcement, so what they're doing with it now, I mean, we kind of, there's not anything more I can do about it. So, well, I met with the FBI agent last month, and she said right now we really have vacancy. And she says, I recognize that potentially is going to victimize more victims, but until something comes up, we don't have anything.
Yeah, as these cases, and like we mentioned, a lot's moving digitally. With that move, police departments maybe don't always have the training that they need or the technology that they need to be able to track. And if it crosses a border and goes to another state or another country, then it gets even harder to have that connection between it. So we try to provide those tools and resources for technology and get the training. But it's a new area, especially with digital forensics and things like that, to be able to track and make a case behind it. But law enforcement wants to get there and is working to getting there, and we're trying to support in any way that we can to get them the things that they need to do that.
Yeah, and another reason why it makes it so difficult is, we kind of have this idea about perpetrators being these just dirty old men in dark corners staring at child porn. But we're finding that the perpetrators come across all socioeconomic spectrums. It's not just male, it's male and female. It's across all professions. The FBI did a large sting against NAMBLA, the National North American Man-Boy Lovers Association. Relatively recently, they had law enforcement people that were busted, they had professors, they had elementary school teachers, doctors, lawyers, just completely across the board, and they're insulating themselves, which makes it even that more difficult to prosecute.
How do we enact change as a Congress and laws and stuff like that? Not with the scapegoats, it's always out there.
Yeah. So we have, our name, Operation Underground Railroad. It's not a name Tim picked it when he started, and it's not a name chosen lightly. Tim's a big student of history, and he thought, a lot of time human trafficking is compared and said it's modern day slavery. And so he thought, well, how can we learn from history and a movement that tried to end slavery before and was relatively successful in how they did it? So he went to the Underground Railroad and how they made a difference. And that's why we have the name Underground Railroad in our name. And one of the things that they were so successful in, and one of the ways that they made change happen, was by getting loud, by making some noise, by pointing out that this does exist. Tim often says that that I just forgot her name. She wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. Harriet Tubman. Thank you. Harriet Beecher Stowe. Even better. Harriet Tubman was the one who got out. Okay. Harriet Beecher Stowe, Abe Lincoln met her and said, you know, you're the lady who wrote the book that started this war, because Uncle Tom's Cabin opened people's eyes to the reality of slavery and what it actually looked like, and got people aggravated, got people frustrated, and then people started to act. And so it's by writing our congressmen and saying, hey, support the Earn It Act. We want you to. And when we see a case that comes and it's out and there's details on it, and we go, wait, why didn't that happen? What fell apart? Is that a systemic problem? Making noise and saying we need to switch the system that caused this problem. It's not going to go away by us being passive. It's something that we need to take action about and do something about through, in some cases, writing our congressmen, in some cases, supporting our local law enforcement in the effort they're doing and giving them the tools that they need to actually be able to get the evidence so that when it does go to trial, or so it can go to trial, those things are successful.
How can we help with that more so society be more aware of this? We're St. George being spearheaded, knowing this is what's going on, everyone should be aware. How do you let people know this?
Yeah. So if everyone didn't hear, she said, how do we get the word out, in essence? How do we make people know about this? Yeah, and learn about it. And that's where Trina comes in here in St. George. And she's one of, I think actively right now, we have 55 volunteer teams around the United States, and we're building them outside the United States as well, that their focus is to build the awareness in the community. So you can talk with Trina. You can go to ourrescue.org and find the information. All of us have a circle of influence. We have multiple circles of influences in our life. For some, it might be a church group, it might be a book club, it might be a knitting group, or our family. And we can help to spread awareness in that circle, and then invite that circle to spread it in their circles. It'd be great if we could, go on the news or something and spread it everywhere and everyone could hear it. That would be the most efficient way, but that's not a way it's going to happen. People don't want to listen. People don't want to hear it. They don't want to believe that it exists. It's hard to say and accept that there's a girl in our community who's being sold for sex by her own family, which 40% of human trafficking in the world starts with a familial connection. A family member is the first one to sell that, or that child, or is the ongoing trafficker. We don't want to accept that. It's easier to say that doesn't exist in the United States, that doesn't exist in my community, but the fact is that it does. It's here in St. George, it's in our communities, it's in our neighborhoods. And we need to invite Trina and others, do things like this. 40 people were educated, got more education today about human trafficking. Now, if the 40 of us went and said, hey, I want to tell my group of friends, we meet every month for a book club, 10 of us, and I want to talk about human trafficking, and invite Trina, invite people to come and teach my group. We're happy to do that. That's what we want to do, is inform. If we all take and educate 10 people, now we're to 400. And if we can continue to do that, that's when we're going to be loud and we can't be ignored. And those traffickers won't have the same space to operate in. As Trina said, we'll shine a light. We'll expose what's happening. And we'll continue to support those individuals, survivors, who are coming out of this. And they'll tell their stories. And they'll help to educate as well. So I would invite you to think of a group and invite Trina, and she can connect with us at OUR as a organization as well, and we can come and support and educate. I'm here in St. George. I'm local, so I'm happy to come anywhere and speak at any time and educate on human trafficking as well. Trina can help in that regard as well. So
Thank you so much for coming. I'm sure if anyone else has any questions, you guys feel free to come up and talk afterwards. But That's our picks and politics for today. We'll be having another one on March 3rd. So hope to see you all there.